Funding for the Maddy Report is made possible by grants from the California Emerging Technology Fund, leaders in the quest for digital equity. The James Irvine Foundation, committed to a California where all low-income workers have the power to advance economically. Fresno State Associated Students, Inc., students serving students. BNSF Railway, moving our economy for 160 years. And The Wonderful Company. The Maddy Report is also made possible thanks to contributions from Harris Ranch Inn and Restaurant and E&J Gallo Winery. From the Maddy Institute, the Public Policy Institute for the Valley's 4 public universities, this is the Maddy Report with Executive Director of the Maddy Institute, Mark Keppler.
The COVID pandemic has had a devastating effect on our economy. Perhaps nowhere has that effect been felt as severely as with small businesses. Recently, California's Little Hoover Commission examined both the short and long-term economic implications effects of COVID-19 on California's small businesses and what California government could do to support an equitable recovery. Our guest is Pedro Nava, the chairperson of the Little Hoover Commission, California Little Hoover Commission. Welcome back to the Maddy Report.
I'm happy to be here. Thank you.
So in your report, you looked at the economic impact of the pandemic. What are the numbers? Just how bad is it?
Well, I mean, it really is devastating. We've got what we've seen is the sharpest economic contraction in California's modern history. More than twice as many Californians lost their jobs as a result of the pandemic as at the depth of the recession in 2008, and we thought that was pretty bad. Californians lost more than 2.6 million jobs in just 2 months, 2 times the number lost during our big recession. From mid-March to September, 7.5 million Californians filed for unemployment benefits. At the deepest point in April, the unemployment rate exceeded 16%. 4% higher than that big depression that we had, recession. The California forecast of weekly unemployment rate exceeded 22% last April. That's also the highest since the depression. By mid-September, it was 15%. And the PPC told us that 9% in May and July were looking part-time, but they would rather work full-time. So it's been devastating.
Yeah, bad is it's not like it's equally distributed, right? Some industries are being hit harder than others.
Yeah, and they are the industries that tend to pay the lowest wages. So, for example, the service sector, leisure, entertainment, retail, hotels, motels, that sort of thing, human-facing, people-to-people, and they're subject to mandatory closures. You've also had, because of the pandemic, a decline in consumption. You're not going out. You're not spending the kind of money that you used to. You're not supporting businesses because you're either on home quarantine or you're just don't have the ability to do it. You had a 44% decline in employment in accommodation and food service industries. Those are again, low-paying jobs. That
I'm sorry. I want to ask you specifically about small businesses because that's kind of important. Those are the businesses that employ fewer than 500 people, which are, frankly, most of the businesses. And they accounted for over half of the state's workforce before the pandemic. A lot of them are minority or women-owned. What impact has that pandemic had specifically on small businesses?
Well, 44% of small businesses in California are either closed or they're going to close. By December of 2020, the number of small businesses that were open had declined by 37% compared to January of 2020. California had the second highest rate of small business closures in the entire country. 6/10 of the U.S., 6 out of 10 metro areas with the highest rates of small business closure in California: San Francisco, San Diego, San Jose, Riverside, LA, Sacramento. We're not sure how many of those are permanent, but looking at the closures, 70% of those were white-owned businesses, 41 black-owned, 31% were low. So impact on the minority community, people of color, has been even worse than for other groups.
You know, you have an interesting quote in your report. I want to quote it to you. That says, quote, "We are living in a Jetsons economy and a Downton Abbey society." So it appears that your report is basically arguing that the pandemic-induced recession has really amplified the state's economic inequities. Can you elaborate?
Well, economic and social. I mean, we know that, for example, on the economic side, higher wage earners, if you make $60K a year or more, more of you have a chance to work remotely. So that only fell by 15% in April. That was only 2.3% lower than the pre-pandemic. So the impacts are nowhere as severe. If you weigh 27,000 a year, you had a 36% in April, 28% below the pre-pandemic levels. So, as compared to somebody who's making 60,000 a year, if you had 5% of high school or less file unemployment claims between March and June versus 10% of those that had a college degree.
Yeah, so it's obviously hitting a certain segment of the population. Well, when we come back, we're going to ask what, if anything, the state government should do to help in this recovery. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. We're talking with Pedro Nava, the chair of California's Little Hoover Commission, about a recent report they issued on how the state can support an equitable post-pandemic recovery. You noted in your report that the California state government does not have the resources to fully address the economic impacts of COVID, and instead, you're really pushing and suggesting these public-private partnerships. I just want that was clearly understandable why and when you wrote that, when the state was looking at a $54 billion deficit. But because of the stock market doing very well and the way California's tax structure is, we're actually going to experience a $15 billion surplus this year. Now, true, the LEO is saying going out in the future, we'll see $7 to $11 billion deficits. But does this change your calculus at all on the value of public-private partnerships?
No, I still think the public-private partnerships are extremely important. You need to continue to build that connection and that relationship with the private sector, because quite frankly, that's where the majority of the capital is. And we can't always be relying on bumps in California's budget in order to get through some tough times. And as you said, this is one-time money. We need federal assistance. I think there's a greater likelihood of that with the new administration, and our businesses in California need that. Plus, there is a strength that develops when you work with the private sector because of their ability to be nimble, to be flexible, and to bring really fresh ideas.
Before we talk about how government can help, I want to talk about some of the challenges that are facing small businesses generally, and then minority-owned small businesses in particular. What are you seeing there?
Well, in particular with minority-owned businesses, they don't have anywhere near the cash that other businesses have available. And so, as an example, most businesses in Black and Latino neighborhoods reported having 14 days of cash on hand. That's all. Minority-owned businesses are 2 times more likely to be at risk or distressed based on profitability, credit scores, and the ability to use retained earnings as a funding source. The Federal Reserve has told us that distressed businesses are 3 times more likely to close due to a 2-month revenue shock rather than non-distressed businesses. So minority-owned businesses are on the edge all of the time, particularly during COVID.
Yeah, it seems like on the edge is a great way to explain that. They don't have a lot of room for error. I mean, they're basically paying their bills on a week-to-week basis. So, if you take a look at the financial support that the state of California is providing to small businesses, what do you find?
Well, our state budget provided $125 million in additional funding for what they call the iBank, and the full title is the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, so that it can help with some of the gaps in the funding from the feds in particular. So there's $50 million available in disaster relief loan guarantee. There's another $50 million for small business loan guarantees. There's $25 million that's going to community development financial institutions, CDFIs. CDFIs are particularly helpful because they are oriented and geared towards small businesses and minority-owned businesses. So the state has been contributing to the best of their ability as well.
Yeah, and I think if you take a look at the current proposed budget by the governor, I think you're going to see more along those lines going forward. And also the legislature now, you're seeing bipartisan efforts to provide assistance to small businesses, and that seems to be good for everyone. And so I think you're going to see more of that going down the line. Up next, we're going to continue our discussion with small businesses and the impact that the pandemic's had on them economically. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. Addressing the economic fallout from the pandemic is going to require an all hands on deck approach involving all levels of government as well as the nonprofit and for-profit sectors. So says a report authored by California's nonpartisan Little Hoover Commission. We're talking with the commission's chair, Pedro Nava. I want to ask you, one of the things you underscore in your report, and we talked about in the last segment, was the importance of these community development financial institutions, or CDFIs. Can you explain again what exactly they are and why they're so important?
Well, the CDFIs are community organizations that provide development information, both urban and rural, by giving small businesses credit and other financial services. And that's an important part of what they do, because many small businesses, particularly minority-owned businesses, need additional help in navigating the paperwork that it takes to get a loan. So, for example, in California, you've got 95 CDFIs that provide about $11 billion in lending in 2018 for affordable housing and small businesses. They have a greater rate of success working with CDFIs, and their loan losses are comparable to other businesses that get loans from what I'll call, I guess, mainstream banks. So they play an important role by providing supportive services for small business.
I want to ask you, though, you have the small business loan program. What's the role of the small business loan program in supporting small businesses and these CDFIs?
Well, the small business loan program is probably more accurately described as the small business loan guarantee program. So what happens is the state of California or other lenders will guarantee a certain portion of the loan, which means that larger banks are more inclined to actually lend money to CDFIs, who then turn around and loan it to the small businesses that need the help. And so it works really well because the larger institutions aren't confronted with a loss as they might be if they had made the loan directly. Now, we also...
I'm sorry. No, I understand. I was reading your report that you mentioned a Canadian study that found that 2/3 to 3/4 of businesses receiving funding they not would have received credit otherwise, and because of these small business loan programs, guarantee programs. Pretty important.
Yeah. Well, and I think almost everybody has had the opportunity to go to their bank and try to refinance your home. Do you know what a nightmare that is to pull that kind of documentation just for a refi? And I went to school, and my wife is really smart, and it still was quite a chore to pull everything together that they needed. So small business owners have all of the stresses and strains that you would associate with a small business: buying product, getting product, running the operations, making payroll. And what they found in Canada is that you need support. All businesses need specialized kind of help to get them going. Now, they also find that these loan programs increase jobs 10 to 25%, and they do it more efficiently than other job programs. So it costs less to create a job with a loan guarantee than it does in other federal programs.
I did see that in your report, and that was very interesting. I mean, because a lot of people want to solve a problem, but we want to solve it in the most efficient and effective way possible. And providing loans to small businesses is a very effective and efficient way to do it. That was a really interesting point I think you made. You also talk about in your report something called the California Rebuilding Fund. Can you explain what that is?
Yeah, this is again an example of the Newsom administration taking the losses of COVID very, very seriously. So the California Rebuilding Fund, they've got different parts of the program that are designed to help small business. So there's the California Small Enterprise Task Force. They designed a loan program that would pull private funding together from different sources and then move that money over to the CDFIs, because then the CDFIs can make the loans to small businesses. There was $25 million that was sent to the iBank in the 21 budget to support CDFIs again, to attract more capital so they can make more loans to businesses. Then the governor and the legislature added $12.5 million to the rebuilding fund in late 1920, and the January budget proposes another $50 million for the fund. So they hope that they can leverage that to almost $900 million in loans from private investors and philanthropy.
Yeah, so they're putting a lot of money there to try to move that forward. Let me ask you this: what about public-private partnerships? What can they do to assist the small businesses?
Well, the public-private partnerships are again, I think, a great example of putting the best of both worlds together. And so, the sort of things that they've done is they've instituted an incentive to provide technical assistance. They call it Shop Safe, Shop Local. It gives small businesses digital tools and resources to help them with e-commerce because, as you know, many of us don't want to go out to go shopping because of the COVID and the contagion. But you don't want to leave the businesses behind, and many of them can still provide services through e-commerce. They also have what's called Safely Making California. That's a partnership between the California Manufacturing Association and the state to make the personal protective equipment that our healthcare providers need in order to continue with their healthcare work.
Okay, so up next, we're going to talk about some of the recommendations the state government can do going forward to help small businesses deal with the economic effects of the pandemic. That conversation in a moment. This is the Maddy Report. Welcome back. I'm Mark Keppler with the Maddy Institute. You know, it's one thing to spot a problem. It's another thing to offer some solutions to those problems. And when it comes to dealing with the economic aftershocks of the pandemic, California's Little Hoover Commission has made some concrete recommendations. Our guest is the commission's chair, Pedro Nava. You know, the first recommendation in your report is, quote, that GoBiz and iBank should develop and execute a strategy for maximizing participation by California's financial institutions in the California Rebuilding Fund. So how would that happen?
Well, you have to develop an outreach program. You may remember, I mean, the drought isn't too far from everybody's memory, but there was a tremendous program that was put together by Water Resources that persuaded people that the water that we took for granted was something that we needed to treasure and preserve and treat with respect. So you can do the same thing with the financial health of the state of California. So we are suggesting that the state use its megaphone to make financial institutions, private investors, and philanthropic donors aware of the rebuilding fund because we want people to invest. We want people to invest in California. We want people to invest in the future. We want people to invest who have the resources so that the state remains healthy and competitive and profitable. That works to everybody's benefit. We also know that the Department of Insurance is what they call California's Organized Investment Network, or COIN, and that works to increase insurance industry's investment in underserved communities, which is so necessary. And then we also want the state to develop a strategy for publicly recognizing the institutional investors and explore additional means for incentivizing participation. You know, it's like everybody likes an attaboy. It doesn't cost a whole lot. And there are people in government that are very good at doing that. And we're saying that they ought to focus on economic health of California to get the California Rebuilding Fund even more robust.
Yeah, you were talking also in your report about the iBank that they need to take steps to ensure that funding reaches small businesses, particularly women-owned and minority-owned small businesses, and in communities that are underserved and communities of color. What would you like to see happen there specifically?
Well, I like to say you can't manage what you don't measure. And so what we find is there is a shortage of data and information. So right now, demographic and geographic data on small businesses receiving support isn't readily available. So you want to know who's getting the money and how they're using it. The state should work with the city and the county governments and CBOs to improve access to information through the iBank. They should publicly report which of the CDFIs receive money through the building fund, and then they can take a look at what gets in the way of people participating. And one of the other recommendations we're going to talk about that I'm sure you're going to get to is let's create a way for people to find out what's available and how they can get it and put it to work.
You know, I'm you're reading my mind. I'm going to get to that question, but before I want to ask you about another one of your recommendations, and that is you want to expand the rebuilding fund to $1 billion, and then frankly see if it works out. And if it does work, go back to the governor and legislature and say, listen, you need to make this an annual appropriation. Now, here's my question. There's a lot of reticence about creating any new benefits or programs that are requiring ongoing allocations because they're not sure how the budget's going to work out in the future. What's your argument to say, no, this is a good investment?
The argument is that successful small businesses, one, are the economic driver of prosperity in California. They are the place where most Californians find work. We also know that the amount of money that they have at this point, $250 million, is not enough. The PPP loans that businesses received, they averaged about $13,000. That would mean that only 19,200 businesses would be covered by that kind of investment. It's just not enough. And
yeah, that's not covering. And there's many, many, many multiples of that, right? Small businesses, a lot more than 19,000 small businesses in California.
Yeah, right. And we already
maybe that many, in one of the counties in California.
Well, and we've already seen how COVID has impacted small businesses, right. And particularly in minority communities. Those businesses are the flavor and the soul and the heart.
Yeah, I'm going to get back to so you remember that question you were talking about getting the word out, and you make another recommendation that GoBiz, which is the governor's Office of Business and Economic Development, should implement a campaign to raise awareness of CDFIs and other mission-based lenders, especially to grant makers and impact investors. Any suggestions how they should go about doing that?
Well, I think they ought to go about it the same way they did to make us worry about the drought. You've got to be aggressive in letting people know about CDFIs, their role, their success, and how important they are to small businesses in California. I would bet you that before we issued this report, you never heard of a CDFI. Well, neither had I. And so, and we're involved in government, but this financial entity is critically important to small businesses, particularly minority-owned businesses. And so they just have to tell more and more people, lenders, institutional lenders, organizations that are professional organizations that provide services. They need to talk to them about CDFIs so that they know more about them.
Yeah, I was going to ask you also, we're running out of time, but I was going to ask you about the State Small Business Administration, but they also have a role to play here as well. So there's a lot packed into this report. And again, I want to encourage our audience to log on to the Little Hoover Commission website and read some of the reports, including this one. All extremely good information. I want to thank our guest, the chairperson of the Little Hoover Commission for California, Pedro Nava, and thank you for joining us. This is Mark Keppler for the Maddy Report. The views expressed in the Maddy Report are those of the individuals participating in the program and do not necessarily reflect the views of the Maddy Institute. If you'd like to share your thoughts about today's episode of the Maddy Report, please visit our website at maddyinstitute.org.